Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Talk Exchange. Today's episode is all about disaster recovery and utilizing the disaster relief fund offered through Exchange. We have several guests with us. We have Katie, Michelle, and Veronica, who have all been affected by disaster recovery and disaster relief in various ways. And they talk about how to rebound from a major storm, the challenges that are associated with that, stories of evacuating family members, the difficulty of not being able to return home, utilizing community resources, and even some really valuable tips and tricks about things that you can do to be better prepared in the unfortunate event that it happens to you. So we hope you enjoy today's episode. Again, it's a lot of great information, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Welcome to Talk Exchange. I'm Tracey Edwards, CEO of the National Exchange Club.
And I'm Kristie Lindahl, Director of Communications.
Hi, Kristie.
Hey, Tracey.
So interesting weather all across the country.
Woo.
Some of you are in places where there's a lot of snow where it shouldn't be. And we have no snow, but it's very cold. So
very cold.
Stay warm and stay safe.
Yes.
You know, our episode today is focused pretty much on weather and natural disasters. You know, those things do happen. But you know, what's great about Exchange is how people come together during those times. Anytime something happens, people immediately want to check in on people, find out how they're doing, and then figure out how they can help. That's the way Exchange was built, was by helping in every situation. But especially when people are in harm's way, our members just reach out. And a lot of times they open their pocketbook and reach out. They want to help people. So today we're joined by 3 of our Exchange Club members in Florida who were definitely hit with a hurricane that happens in Florida, but in this one did affect some of our members. And the great thing about the National Exchange Club is that we do offer a disaster relief program, which is funded by our members because, again, they want to open their pockets and help their fellow members. And we have a way of just reaching people and saying, hey, if you need help, we're here to help with those immediate and emergency needs. So today we're excited to have with us Katie Becker, Veronica Huzzard, and Michelle Walag from Florida District Exchange Clubs. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you all, and thanks for taking time out of your day today.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess we'll just kick off by talking about, you know, for those of us like Kristie and me, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, living in Northwest Ohio, we have a different set of things that happen. Tornadoes typically happen here, but hurricanes, I can't even imagine going through that. So starting with Veronica, tell us about your experience and how it impacted you and maybe some of your challenges for people listening who've never had that happen.
Well, first of all, I'm an insurance agent here in Florida too, so it really affects me because obviously you have an insurance agent for when you have a claim. So very busy time for me. But this is the first hurricane that I actually had my own physical damage to my home. So it was probably the scariest one I've been through. I've lived here in Florida for over 30 years now, and I've experienced a lot of hurricanes, but with this one being almost a direct hit where we live in Manatee County, extremely scary. So I had roof damage and window blew out during the storm in my son's room. Luckily, he wasn't near the window when it happened, but it was really scary. So you know, and still working on getting the damage repaired at this point. So the roof is finally has been replaced, but we're still waiting on the window to be fixed. So when you have this extensive damage and there's thousands and thousands of people that need repair, you kind of get in line, and it takes a lot of time for everybody to be brought back to whole.
I'm sure. And how long were you without power and just kind of in limbo?
Lost power literally that night, like around 8:30, I think. And that was kind of when the dirty side of the storm started to hit us and the winds really picked up. We had, I think it was over 110 miles sustained winds for, I don't know how many hours. It felt like it was never going to end.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was very scary. I don't want to, I'd be happy to not have to go through it again, but unfortunately, I don't think that's a choice that we live with in Florida, because it seems like more and more the storms are getting stronger. So
It does seem that way. And to your point, as an insurer, you're in the insurance business, so you're concerned about your family's safety, and then you're concerned about your clients, and then lots to do and people to help after that. And I thought about Katie too, because Katie is the director at one of our Exchange Club Centers for the Prevention of Child Abuse there in Florida. So, Katie, you went through it, and again, worried about your family, your property, and then I'm sure your center, your clients, all those people. Tell us about what you were thinking and going through in that moment in time.
Well, one of the things that I really sat with when I was invited to this podcast and received some of the questions beforehand. When we think of hurricane, it was really hurricanes for us, right? So it was Tropical Storm Debbie, and then it was Helene, and then we had Milton. So there were probably 4.5 weeks of constant stress, of constant emergency management. And for our center, what that looked like is we had our hurricane shutters up for about 2 months, almost the entirety of the hurricane season after we had Debbie, because, having Veronica is on our board. She's actually our board president, and her being an insurance agent, we read our policies very closely.
And you had good advice.
We had very good advice. And of course, if we didn't have our shutters on, we couldn't have a claim for hurricane damage. So we had our staff. We have about 20 staff members hanging our aluminum shutters. One of our educators, her house was completely flooded in Debbie. She was out of power for about 2 weeks. And then when Helene came, personally, we live about a block and a half away from Palmasola Bay, which is a more inland bay. And we had a storm surge that was biblical. It went over the shores, through the first row of houses, up probably 3 or 4 other rows of houses, about 2 houses away from our home. And it wasn't scary in that way that we were underwater at that moment, but we were the next day out with our neighbors pulling furniture, soaking wet carpet, every content of their home onto the road. And probably a week and a half after that, Milton came through, and all of the debris, imagine homes that had been completely gutted, and every item is on the street. And now you have a Category 5 hurricane coming through, and you think about every single one of those projectiles and what that looks like for the community. So my family personally, we evacuated to Orlando. We have a young son and animals, and just decided that it wasn't worth riding out. A lot of the families that we serve, unfortunately, don't have that benefit. But one thing that we really pride ourselves in as a CAP center is really building those relationships with the families we serve so that they can call us if they need help. So a lot of our educators were, up until some of those last moments when the hurricanes were coming through, checking on families, making sure they were safe, making sure they knew where different evacuation zones were, or where shelters may be that they could go to. And then afterwards, checking in to say, how can we help? What do you need? And then responding in that way. So it was really mentally, emotionally, physically exhausting. It left all of us really bankrupt when it came to everything we had to give. And the thing that is very odd about living in an area that goes through that type of natural disaster is the expected rebound, right? So, okay, everybody's through it, and now we're back to normal, without really taking a moment to reflect on what the community has gone through and what you may have gone through personally, and sitting in that space to heal and recover.
Well, I'm sure that that's true. And what you just described sounds absolutely horrific. But to your point, where you said you had weeks of stress, not just that one incident, but all of the weeks with storms around you and concerns for so many people and things.
Yeah, I think, and if I could speak to, Katie, what you were doing, your own family, managing your staff, their personal needs. it speaks to why people give to our disaster relief fund, because they know that you're out there, you belong to Exchange with your heart. You're out there serving your community as an Exchange Club member while you have your own needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we'll fill your pitcher for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that illustration. That I learned so much in what you spoke about, and it is daunting because I understand what you're saying, because you turn on the news the next day and everything's normal. It's sunny. It's fine. Get back to life, right? And you think, whoa, 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 all of this just happened. How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, living in the North, we don't think about the cleanup and, what happens after the storm. So it's nice that you've pointed that out for everyone.
Absolutely. And Michelle Walag is here as well, an Exchange Club member, and also works with our center there, our newest center, Ready for Life in Pinellas County. And I know you had a lot of family, including yourself and members and clients that you helped that were affected as well. Tell us about your experience, Michelle.
Yeah, like Katie and Veronica have spoken to, the complexity of it is really rather extreme. I mean, I felt like we just had to keep barreling through. I wasn't home for almost a full month because I live on the water and had to be evacuated for the 3 storms. And in between the 3 storms, I lost a family member in the storm in North Carolina.
Oh my
So there was
God.
another jaunt up to North Carolina to help another family member up there. Um, the evacuations were very challenging for me personally. And like Katie was sharing, we're all exhausted. Everyone I know has been affected by these storms, and many of the people I care about most in the world lost their homes. They lost everything. I was very blessed. My home did not get flooded. It came within inches in 2 of the storms, but just the way the storms came on shore, the tides didn't quite make it to my door. But I had to also evacuate my mother and my sister. My
Wow.
mother had it's called Lewy body dementia, and it's like Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a Parkinsonian syndrome. So she was severely disabled. And my sister was her full-time caregiver. So to make evacuation plans for able adults is one thing. I have pets, and I can bounce around pretty much anywhere. I can figure that out. But to create a safer scenario for my mom was very difficult, and we had to plan things out to be near hospitals and places where if we lost power, she could get care. Um, and then so while jetting around between North Carolina and Florida through all of this personal um, turbulence and grief, um, I was making plans here, running food drives, virtually connecting the dots to help the hundreds of young adults who are exiting foster care and the young parents in our programming here, to prepare for the storm. Everybody needed a 3-day supply of food, and they didn't have resources to make that happen. So we called upon our neighbors and our organizations and a lot of Exchange Club members, and we put together a massive preparation program and then a massive relief program 3 times in a row.
Wow.
I mean, it was round the clock for everyone. And then after Milton, the 3rd storm, the rivers took a week to crest, which is another something that not everybody thinks about. All of that water has to go somewhere, and when the rivers fill up, it can take several weeks for that water to then drain back. And unfortunately, my mother and my sister, where they lived, the Green River Swamp, just 3 hours north of me, was flooded, and so they couldn't return home for another week. And so personally, like I said, I mean, I can live in my car, but to take care of my mom and make sure that she had what she needed was really difficult. I'll tell you too that it became a blessing to have all of that time evacuated with my mom, because she ended up passing away just a couple of weeks after all of this. And so to get to be with her day in and day out for weeks was really a gift in my life. That 3-hour drive was a pretty long drive every weekend, but this was really precious time. Um, I hear a lot of people here talking about how grateful how grateful we all are, to have
Yes.
each other and to have made it through that. And I'm
Hmm.
I'm most grateful that my mom didn't die in a flood, or
Absolutely.
stuck in a building that got a tree on it. She was safe and warm in her bed and she was comfortable. So,
And thank God you were with her, and you have our
yeah,
condolences, Michelle. My gosh, to experience that type of an
Yes.
impactful situation is heavy, to say the
the loss. Yeah,
least.
the family member in North
Yeah.
Carolina died taking care of property from a
Oh my
mudslide. I
God.
mean,
Oh,
it was unbelievable. It's really surreal to walk through those situations. Like I said, I felt like we just had to keep going. Next step, next step,
mm-hmm.
next
Yeah.
step.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm.
don't know that we've slowed down enough yet to really process it all, but it's starting to settle a little bit.
Right.
Well, how lovely that you were able to be with
Mm-hmm.
your family, though,
Yeah.
and make those memories. I see a smile in your sadness
Yeah.
creeping
Mhm.
out.
Aw.
Yeah. So, three different perspectives.
Definitely. And it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really overwhelming because, it makes me think about the people who were so quick to call and make donations,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't even realize the complexity of your situation, right? They're thinking, oh, they're going to need food. They
Yep.
might not have been able to take their clothing. So I guess I'm
Mm-hmm.
just wondering, at what point do you sit and think, well, I need to eat something, and my refrigerator is not accessible? Or I know we heard from people like
Mm-hmm.
that who lost their food because they lost power. So at what point do you think I need just the basics? How does that look? And then Veronica, I don't have a lot of involvement with insurance claims, but just thinking about the time to process things. So, how do people, when they really don't have a lot of resources, meet their immediate needs when all their food goes bad and they need
Mm-hmm.
something to eat, or they left and they don't have any clothing? I mean, what do they do? What are the first steps you take when you do wake up the next day and say, "Okay, what do I do now?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as being on the insurance side of it, insurance policies cover some things, but don't cover everything. So it really depends on your individual policy on what it's going to cover. So I know a lot of people, you can reach out to FEMA right away. That's another way,
Mhm.
and I think it was $770 that they were giving. But if you have, a refrigerator full of meat and freezers full of food, food's expensive these days. So that
Mm.
normally $750 is not really going to cover your loss. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, reaching out to communities. I know here locally, our churches were amazing. Food pantries were set up right away. You could go and get food literally almost the next day the churches were opening their doors. So a lot of really great resources in our community, which is one amazing thing about
Yes.
Sarasota, Bradenton area, even up in Pinellas. It's a really good community as far as coming together. I think that is one thing that the hurricane does is shows how great of a community you live in.
Mhm.
So those resources are out there. And then of course, obviously if you're, have damage, you need to file a claim with your insurance. So our agency, actually, we lost power in the agency. We lost phones, everything, because our phones are through the computer now.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
cell phone service was spotty in a lot of cases. So literally, I didn't have electricity. You'd asked me that in your last question, and I kind of went and didn't answer it. So I apologize. But we lost power that night and didn't get it back till that coming Saturday in my area. But I had already left my house on Saturday morning and went to a friend's house in Sarasota to start helping my clients that Saturday morning to call everyone back and get policy information. Because I tell everybody, you should, in your phone, you should have your insurance phone number
Mhm.
for claims, your agent's number, your policy number, all of that in your phone. Because normally, if you're going to evacuate, you might forget your insurance papers, but you would have your phone. So but a lot of people don't do that. So I spent Saturday and Sunday that week and working and trying to help clients get in touch. because it's, again, for the insurance carriers, it's overwhelming too, because the information that you've got to get to them, and they have to call you back, or you can email it in. There's companies do it all different ways, but I was there to assist, and I'm still assisting people with their claims now, months later. Most people have gotten checks, but still some people need to reopen, and it's a cumbersome when you have thousands and thousands of claims, and I don't remember I don't know what the final number is going to be with the millions, and maybe it's probably billions of dollars in damage that we had from these hurricanes. So so just being there to help is really important, and knowing your community resources. And just like with the exchange emergency fund, I mean, I was so grateful to be able to have that, because your hurricane deductible is very expensive, and a lot of people don't have $10,000 saved for an emergency. And so, and honestly, it's probably around that much I've had to pay out of pocket. So the help that I got from exchange has been a blessing. So I just want to thank you very much for, allowing me to be able to partake and be able to receive a check to help me, move forward personally.
Aw. Well, that's made possible by our members for sure, and we're very appreciative of that. In fact, we were going to ask Katie, how did you hear about the disaster relief fund that Exchange offers?
Well, part of it is really Veronica.
Oh, good.
We're active exchange members in our local clubs, and our local leadership made an announcement at club meetings, and it was just an opportunity that we found out about by attending the club meetings. And afterwards, I reached out to Veronica and learned the process and moved forward. So it was really also, I have to say, very simple. And I appreciate the simplicity when it comes to that request, because when you are in the middle of those immediate recovery efforts, you can't really sit down and write a complex grant application. And, we were able to provide the necessary information, the necessary documentation, but it wasn't overburdensome, and we were able to get that relief very quickly so that we could put it to use.
Good. That's good feedback. So thank you for that. That's our goal too, is to get it right to you. In fact, I'm so proud of our staff, because I know on the weekend, between our development manager and our finance manager, they were, we were all messaging each other, because they wanted to, how do we get this check to them immediately? How do we get this money to them immediately? We don't want to wait for the weekend to hold things up. So everybody, we're all with you in just trying to do what we can, even though it's very small in the big picture. People really want to help. What do you have to say, Michelle, to people who donated to that fund to make this possible? They're going to be amazed by hearing all of your stories. I can tell you that. Wow.
I can say thank you. It was such a surprise to me. I know about the 501 fund, and I know, Exchange is always supportive of centers and right there to help people. I had no idea that on a personal level, I got an email and I thought, is this what I think it says? And I mean, I laugh a little bit because I used up not only my emergency account, which was quite significant, but I used my whole vacation fund, which was not as big, but I got to live in hotels all around, the United States for a month, but it wasn't the way I had planned to spend that money. And it was such a fast outpouring of cash to have some support available personally meant everything. The other thing is I felt cared about. This is a community that we are as exchange members, and I felt loved, and I know I was being prayed for. I know that people really cared, not just about me, but that was my personal impact. It was amazing to be so held. So thank you all.
Well, it's wonderful. And you mentioned hotel rooms, and I know that quite a few people who responded to the Disaster Relief Fund indicated that's how they were going to use the funds, which just, that hearing that just makes you think, wow, these people can't be in their home. So they need to just be somewhere. It's, well.
Well, and I'll tell you, Michelle, on the other end of that too, it's very heartwarming for us when we have members call to say, do we have anybody who's been in the path of this? Or can I donate to the fund because we know people are going to be needing it. That is a proactive caring.
Definitely, most definitely. And I know you all indicated there's still work to be done. What types of resources or help do you still need in this many months afterwards? What does the immediate future look like? Where are you at in the rebuilding process, and what are you seeing out there?
Well, I personally, at our center, we had some building damage, and with the resources from the fund, we're able to repair our roof, our soffit and fascia.
Wow.
And what we're seeing now, we were able to help some of our families in that immediate, but beyond that initial loss of food or initial loss of property, a lot of the families that we serve work in the service industry or the retail industry because that is one of the largest industries in our community here in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And when these disasters come through, it stops those lines of business for a considerable amount of time. And we're talking about families who are working hard. They're doing everything they can, but can't always catch up and build a savings that's necessary to hold them through to when that business begins again. So what we're using some of the disaster funds for are like gift cards. So we're able to get Walmart gift cards that are basically restricted to use for food, gas, and clothing. And we can help provide that to some of our families as a stopgap between when they're able to start working again and when those businesses are brought back to full capacity.
Wow, just so many layers to this that I would never imagine.
No.
Mhm.
So what haven't we touched on today that you'd like to say before we depart? Veronica, any last minute messages or things that we didn't pull out of the conversation?
I want to say personal thank you too. I know personally myself, I've donated to the fund in the past and so have the clubs. So,
Yes.
hopefully I don't ever have to get money again and we can
Right.
donate again. That would be my goal personally. But just being an exchange club member now for 15 years, I just am very, very proud of being part of this organization and what we stand for. And just the fact that we have thousands of people, throughout the country that are not just when we have an emergency, but on a monthly, weekly basis are giving back to our communities. And just if, everyone in the United States even gave 1 hour of community service a year, what an amazing country we would have. And, unfortunately, sometimes it takes bad things to make people come together. And that's what I really took out of the hurricane is it really shows the community and the community heroes that come out and, you know, whether it's a store that is a location for a donation drop off or it's some, like myself, when we had Helene come through going and helping people pull all the wet stuff out of their garage because they were flooded and just that community, that sense of community. And that's the one thing that I feel is so amazing about Exchange is what we do for the community and how we all come together.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to be part of a nationwide network that really cares about each other and looks to help each other. I know our phones were ringing off the hook with people wanting to help and concerned about all of you. So just know that and know people are here to help and do really care about you. And thank you all for joining us to talk about a really difficult subject that so personally affected all of you.
And we know your journey is not over. We'll continue to pray for you and your families and the people that you serve.
Absolutely. Michelle, any final words of thought for our audience today?
Oh, I just am filled with such a sense of gratitude and warmth. I realize that there are people suffering in a lot of areas, and the work that we do together in this volunteer role it makes such a big impact in so many lives. I know even fundraising efforts here are impacted significantly.
Sure.
Because other people are suffering. Like I said, almost everyone I know has been impacted by this storm. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy and very proud to be a part of a relief effort that makes an individual impact on these
Yeah.
lives. We do. So thank you all.
Thank you. Well, thanks to our guests today, Michelle, Katie, and Veronica. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about something that has so personally affected you, so many of our Florida Exchange Club members and your community. And we'll keep in touch and continue to check in with you. To our listening audience, if you'd like to learn more about Exchange and how you can get involved in a network that truly cares about each other and looks to help each other, please visit nationalexchangeclub.org. And to our Exchange Club members who may be listening, we thank you. Thank you for being part of this great network and looking to help each other. And thanks for listening to this episode of Talk Exchange. Wow.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks is just not enough. I mean, I'm so overwhelmed by the stories you've shared and what you personally went through. And thank you for joining us to share that and really opening our eyes to what you go through every time one of these storms hits. It's
even just having that amount of money to pay for the deductible.
Right.
Insane.
How do people do it? I know it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.